Good evening, peoples, and welcome again to my living room for our Tuesday evening Bible study with me and Gingersnap here. We've really been on a kick of minor prophets this summer. I went through 3 in a row with Jonah and Amos, and then Micah, who we finished last week. So I thought that we would take a little break from minor prophets and look at the creation stories of Genesis. There are 2 separate creation stories in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. They overlap a lot. There are some differences in between them, which we will get to. So tonight I thought we would look at the first Genesis story, which is found in Genesis 1, verse 1 through Genesis 2, verse 3, because when they divided the Bible up into chapters and verses, it was completely arbitrary. It would make a lot more sense for one complete story to be the first chapter of Genesis, and then another complete story be the second chapter of Genesis, but that's not how they went with things. I hope there was some method to making the chapters, but I don't know what it was. So, hear now the word of the Lord. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light, and that would have been a lot cooler if my external battery hadn't shut itself off before I could turn the light on. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness God called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. So in our English translation of the Bible, we usually have the very familiar phrase, "in the beginning," and the image that the universe was a formless void, or formless and empty, maybe. One of my favorite Bible translators, Robert Alter, who is really into the poetry of Hebrew, translates it as welter and waste to keep some of the sense of the poetic sounds from the Hebrew, which is tohu wabahu, the emptiness, the chaos, basically, which is also neat. So this image of being without form and also being totally empty is then counteracted throughout the rest of the story, because what is formless, God gives form, and what is empty, God fills. And God said, "Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." So God made the dome and separated the waters that were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome. And it was so. God called the dome sky, and there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. So this one maybe needs a bit of illustration, and I apologize for being a terrible artist. So if we're imagining these blue and green scribbles as the formless, empty chaos that was the universe before God started speaking and creating, God separates, so this is all water because it's blue, sure. So God separates water from water with a dome. So here we are separating by erasing, and there's a dome. Is that visible? Mostly. So now there's waters above and there's waters below. So now that there's this sky, some of the water is going to kind of settle down a little bit. Yeah, so now you can stay, Gingersnap. Okay, so now this blank space here is the sky, and so the water is above, so like all the clouds, we'll call that a cloud, is up here, and there's something that is separating the waters of the sky, so that'd be like rain and snow and all of that from the waters down below. So that's not necessarily literally how the universe is, but it's a decent enough illustration for a world that doesn't have a concept of microbiology or whatever. To be fair, I'm pretty sure that if the exact specifications of I don't know, some aspect of the cosmos was explained to me, I would explain it with terrible illustration. Yeah, so there's waters above and there's waters below. And so when it rains, it sort of comes down through the dome above, through like little holes, and that's rain, which is a neat image. It kind of connects the waters above and the waters below as being the same substance, which, I mean, obviously it is, but, you know, a bit more like a snow globe. So, you can come back up. Thank you. And God said, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters were gathered together, God called seas, and God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seeds, and fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with a seed in it." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed of every kind, and trees of every kind bearing fruit with a seed in it. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. So now somewhere above the waters there are bodies of land, such as this pink scribble, we'll say. And growing on that land, there are things like oranges. Apparently I'm really into props today. So these are the first 3 days of creation when God has been forming what was formless. So there is light, there is a division of water into the sky and the waters, and then there is the division of earth and sea. So this was a formless blob of blue and green scribbles, and now there are blue and green and pink scribbles, and we're pretending that it represents something coherent. So now the second set of 3 days is kind of a neat balance of the first 3. And God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth." And it was so. God made the 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the 4th day. So we can't have individual lights until there is a concept of lights. But there's definitely a neat symmetry that on day 1, God creates light, and on day 4, God creates the sun and the moon and the stars. So now, somewhere up in our dome, we've got little stars shining, and a sun, which is also a star. No, I'm sorry, I keep moving my arms around too much, it's confusing you. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky." So God created the great sea monsters, and every living creature that moves, of every kind, with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth." And there was evening, and there was morning, the 5th day. So on the 2nd day, God created the sky from the water, so that there is heavens and seas. And on the 5th day, God creates creatures to live there. So in the sky, there are birds and flying things, and in the waters, there are fish and sea creatures. So there are, for example, penguins, which aren't exactly a flying bird, but they are a winged bird that also live in the sea, and perhaps platypuses, which are also an interesting exception to creatures that live under waters. Don't get excited about platypus. We're not playing with platypus right now. I guess it squeaks. Okay. So, and God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things and wild animals of the earth of every kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was good. Yes, even this living wild creature, God sees as good. You're very cute, Gingersnap. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created humankind in God's image. In the image of God, they were created. Male and female, God created them. So, of course, the word in Hebrew for humankind or mankind or humanity or however your translation wants to phrase it is Adam, A-D-A-M, which is where we get the name Adam. But it's not referring to a single person. It is referring to the concept of being human. So God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." God said, "See, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw everything that God had made, and indeed, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. So before I started studying the Bible, it always confused me a little bit that the phrasing in Genesis is, "and there was evening and there was morning," the first day, the second day, etc. Whereas in our understanding of days, we would usually say there was morning and there was evening. But in the ancient world, the new day began at sunset. So, fun fact. Because for so long that was the understanding of when the new day began. That is why we celebrate Christmas not on, well, I mean also on December 25th, but we have our big service on Christmas Eve, the night before. So there is an understanding that Christmas begins when the sun sets on December 24th. So this is also why we had Easter Vigil service this evening, many months ago, this year, the night before Easter morning, because the celebration of the resurrection starts when the sun goes down. So there are a lot of Catholics who will go to Mass on Saturday night rather than Sunday morning, again, because that somehow counts, which is an interesting loophole, but definitely allows for different schedules to be able to participate in Sunday. So thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their multitude. And on the seventh day God finished the work that God had done. And God rested on the seventh day from all the work that God had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work that God had done in creation. This is the word of the Lord. So there really is a really neat pattern and cycle and neat symmetry to this, that on day 1 there is light, and on day 4 there is the sun, the moon, the stars. On day 2 there is the sky and the seas, and on day 5 there are the birds and the aquatic animals, including penguins, which are both of these categories. On day 3, God creates the earth and the seas and plants, and on day 6, God creates living creatures. So it's this neat like fulfillment and continuation, as in the first 3 days God forms, and in the second 3 days God fills, and then God rests. So we often have, we refer to all of creation as the heavens and the earth. And when we say that, what we are understanding is the heavens and the earth and everything in between. Because in between the skies and the sea, there is the land and all of these things in it. So it's not literally the sky and the dirt. When we talk about the heavens and the earth, that is everything all encompassed within creation. So there's a sense of this and everything in between. So we talk about God as being the Alpha and the Omega, which are the Greek letters A and Z, basically. So it's not that God is literally the first letter of the alphabet and the last letter of the alphabet, which, I mean, I guess God is. But the point is that God is also everything in between those. So not just the words that can only be spelled with A and Z. I believe that za is an acceptable word in Scrabble as a shortened version of pizza, but that's probably the only word that can be made with A and Z. God is every word that can be created with all of the letters. God is everything, not just one end and the other, but everything in between. So there's just this massive vastness and diversity in this story, that there is just this huge canvas that God has painted with words, which is really neat. I love the idea that everything that is in existence was created out of a conversation that God had with us, and God speaking us into being. We're very up and down this evening, Gingersnap. Would you just sit still? Thank you. I mean, God did create you and call you good, so maybe you could behave like a good cat. Thank you. So that is the first creation story. We'll get to the second next week, and then we'll look at some of the differences in between them. Together, they paint a more full picture of creation, filling in different angles and ideas and imagery. So I think that this first story of creation is just so gorgeous with the poetry. It's definitely one that comes up a lot in art and in the neat ordering of things. So good night, peoples. Just as Gingersnap decides she's going to settle down and be calm, of course. So good night until we see you again.